That's not fair. That's not fair at all. There was time now.
Asking what is a book? Well, that's going to mean different things to different people. To the author, it's everything. They pour their heart and soul into their books. They have knowledge, information, experience, and training that they want to put in one place and then share it with others. Let's say somebody had walked up to me before I started work on the first Oathbreakers book. Start tomorrow and 2 years from now, you're going to write a book that's 310 pages about police reform and police accountability. Good luck. And then they walked off. I'd be thinking, you're nuts. What are you talking about? However, I wrote 5 books, my memoirs as a South Dakota game warden, before I ever started the first Oathbreaker book. I must like to write. Well, not really, but I guess. Before we get into the sales figures for the 2 Oathbreakers books, there's just a handful of books that crossed my path during my life that I want to mention. They're pretty diverse. And the first one I'm going to start with, it's going to be, oh my, yeah, you'll see. You'll see. DB's a Nazi, DB's a Nazi, no he's not, no he's not. This is the best book I've ever read in my life, and it's terrifying. I read it at least 3 times, enough where I even picked up just the tiniest bit of German. That's right, German. What made it so good? It's Adolf Hitler, and everything he did and who he surrounded himself with and what motivated them. It goes back, I don't know, several generations before his birth to cover his lineage, his genealogy, and yes, there was Jewish blood in his line. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I think a lot of us have probably heard of Kristallnacht, Night of the Broken Glass, and there's Night of the Long Knives. Oh, you got to read about the Night of the Long Knives. What I hadn't heard of was Nacht und Nebel. Nacht und Nebel. Night and fog. Well, what's night and fog? Exactly what it sounds like. People would just disappear. Nobody would know that they were snatched, and they were never seen or heard from ever again. They vanished into Nacht, the night, und Nebel, and fog. Night and fog. Never to be heard or seen from again. That was the ultimate terror weapon that Hitler used not only against the enemy, but against his own people to keep them in line. Never, ever give up your guns. And that's all I have to say about that. Now I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Albert Fish, the original In the Flesh Boogeyman. That's what he was called. He terrorized New York City in the early 20th century. Oh, Mr. Fish was a bad boy, but he was a worse man. Yeah, when he'd get hungry, I don't know, he could have been related to that one guy. What's his name? Dahmer? Yeah, Dahmer. And to keep his impulses under control, well, poor little Albie, he figured out a way to repurpose darning needles. Not sewing needles, darning needles. They're bigger than regular sewing needles. See, he had to keep the pain to control his impulses. Oh, you ought to see the pictures, the x-ray pictures in the book. What he did when he repurposed his darning needles. He was a bad boy and a bad man. He was very, very bad. So let's say goodbye to Albert Fish, the boogeyman, the real-life boogeyman, and let's turn to World War II and the best book I've ever read about World War II. My dad served in the Navy, my late dad. Right after Pearl Harbor is when it was attacked, and defending Wake Island was a small contingency of United States Marines and some civilian contractors, a few who hung around while the rest were evacuated. And I don't know if I can actually do it justice, what those Marines did. and what they went through after they were captured, and I don't want to say any more than that. Those who survived 4 years of a Japanese POW camp when they came back after the war and they would be attending an official function. Whenever one of them would walk into the room, the cry would go out, "Attention on deck, Wake Island Marine." And everybody in that room would stand as their way of showing deference and respect to that Marine. In a show of deference and respect, please show deference and respect to the memory of those Marines who fought and died at Wake Island and in the POW camps afterwards. Honor their memory. Please read their story. The first Rise of the Oathbreakers book is sold in about 3.5 years, or let's call it 44 months. 1,969 books. And that's all 100% because my publishing company, BookBaby, tracks everything right to the book and right to the penny. However, when you subtract the books that I purchase on my own dime, that takes that total down to about 1,800. That's how many books I purchased and sent to other people right out of my pocket. Let's use 1,800 as the number of books that were bought by people other than me and divide it by 44 months, the time frame since it came out for sale. And 1,800 divided by 44 will be this number of books sold per month. 1,800 divided by 44 equals 41 books sold per month, or 1.3 books sold each day since it's been out for 3.5 years. Just basically a book a day. That makes you want to go out and write more books. When you hear the phrase, a starving author, I can relate to that. That morale booster weren't enough. Now I have to humiliate myself by sharing with you the book sales over the last year that part 2's been out. Yep, this is fun. Look at that number. That's scrumptious. Subtract 21, the number of books that I spent my own money on to send to other people. 50 books in a year. It came out August 23. 12 months. Don't have to work too hard to do the math. That's 4 a month. That's one every week. One a week. Thank goodness things look better when you factor it out into a per day number. It's 0.14 per day. 0.14 per day. I'm trying to figure out how I can sell 0.14 books. It's like what my one friend used to say, "You know, Dave, you got to be the eternal optimist." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" "Well, it could always be worse." And I asked him, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, it could be 0.13 books per day." Rumor has it I buried his body at the local landfill, but no, it wasn't the local landfill. Stupid rumors. Just before part 2 came out, it had been reviewed by 3 independent book reviewers, and their comments were just humbling. They were remarkable, and I was really optimistic, but I guess it just didn't work out. Why the books flopped? And when I say that, I mean like irredeemably. They're not going to sell because over 1 million people know about them, and they've decided they're not their cup of tea. One thing I want to remind folks is that with a book, you can take it anywhere you want. You can pass it around for other people to read. You don't have to put a charge on it. You can actually write notes in the margin, and you can dog-ear the pages if you want. The days of reading a conventional book as a means of education, entertainment, maybe even a distraction, they're gone, and they're not going to come back. Not the way they were when I was a kid growing up. Couldn't get enough of books. And there's a lot of advantages to that. Turning away from books, I think, is a big mistake. And it's not just because I write books. But if we think that this way of life is going to continue unabated, unaffected, well, we shouldn't just assume that. The reason why I included that black and white clip with Burgess Meredith at the beginning, post-atomic blast, and he wanted to read books because that's what he loved to do, and he had all the time and all the books. He was going to be happy as a clam until he broke his glasses, which meant that essentially the books all disappeared. We don't want books to disappear. Audiobooks have become real popular, and I can understand why, but it's listening, it's not reading. And there is a distinction. I know there's a convenience factor, and that's fine. If people want to read my books or they want to listen to my books on audiobook, the second one is not available on audiobook. The first one is, but because I use an AI-generated voice, they won't sell it like on Amazon or other online book retailers. You have to go to bookbaby.com, they're my publisher, and go into the bookshop section and it'll be there. It's okay, but it wasn't my voice. Using your own voice, there's so much investment in time and special equipment. You don't just talk into a $300 cell phone like I'm doing now. It's way more complicated and far more expensive. Looking back, I don't know. But because of the sales being so crappy, I'm not going to put it on audiobook, not part 2. No way. So people don't read books the way they used to, and I'm going to guess a lot of folks think, well, it's a really dry subject. Police accountability and police reform and knowing your rights. I don't write boring books. A lot of you guys have heard me say that before. I don't write boring books. Because of the subject matter being police reform, accountability, and knowing your rights, doesn't mean they're dry, boring books. I don't write boring books. So I just want to kind of get that out there and let people know that if that's what's holding them back, they shouldn't let it. Well, it's time to put this video and my 2 books to bed. But before I do, there's 3 things I want to show you, and they'll speak for themselves. And they have to do with part 1, Rise of the Oathbreakers. At the time that these things were written, part 2 wasn't out yet. Are they good books? Well, don't take my word for it. Let the reader speak on my behalf. The first one, well, you look at the top, I go fuck Yosef. I know, got more comments, I still have 70 pages left. Most people consider me a sarcastic asshole, but I'm a newbie, a rank amateur at sarcasm compared to D.B. McCrae. He is a sarcasm Jedi, and his sarcasm cuts deep. He could write another book getting responses from the idiot cops that he uses as examples of morons in law enforcement. That speaks for itself. That was the 4th comment he left below a YouTube video, and he still had 70 pages left. This one from Tell the Truth, Telling the Truth, thank you in all caps. We know what that means. You're welcome. You're very welcome. Third and last is Laura Peterson wrote, best book I've bought ever. Know your rights. Thank you. You're welcome, Laura Peterson, and thank you. And I happen to know through this communication below a YouTube video that Laura Peterson is a grandmother, and she bought 2 copies of part 1, and the second was for her 8-year-old grandson, 8 years old at the time. That's the value of the books. That's the value of the books. Bottom line, when it comes to the number 1 reason why my books don't sell, and by the way, they are really, really good books. In fact, I'd say they're great books, but what do I know? I only wrote them. Books simply cannot keep up with the entertainment value of the internet. Whatever entertainment value books used to have is completely gone. And what I've learned from this experience, I'll never write another book. Not a book, a page, a paragraph, sentence, or even a single word. I'm out. So you guys take care, stay safe. It's a crazy world. It's only going to get crazier. Never give up your guns. And for those of you who have yet to take advantage of the Second Amendment, what the fuck are you waiting for?